with the specific people who die at the hands of the beast. Is the beast conflated with the Antichrist? And if he's a future figure, then we must be talking about an event that occurs in the future, not something that happened in the past with Nero, for example.
I think the beast is more of a reference to kind of world systems, during the times being Rome, during, other moments could be other powers you could reference. More so as this idea of a beast. The beast isn't necessarily, I think, embodied as like a physical person. So I think that those are kind of different concepts. So the beast has to do with like the idea of Rome. And so like you see this actually in the book of Daniel as well, right? Oh, and the beast coming out from the sea, and it's coming up and it's rising up and taking over these things. And that this was to be understood to be one of the countries of the era, rising up and taking out the other countries. And so I think that that's more so the idea of what's really going on in the book of Revelation is the beast isn't really represented by an individual or a person, but instead it's represented by powers, governmental authorities and powers. And so I don't believe that it's the book of Revelation has depicted these specific powers. The number of people that are all like, oh, it's Russia. Oh, it's Turkey. Oh, this is, they want to map out all of these things, knock yourself out. But I think you're wasting some of your time.
Sure. I think it could be an institution, though it seems to be affiliated with the Antichrist to me, especially because of the imagery of the one of its heads receives a mortal wound and then it appears to heal the wound. This is very clear Antichrist. It's faking the act of Christ kind of idea. And also, this passage specifically talks about the receipt and use of the mark of the beast, which you will not be able to buy or sell without, which really seems future tense. That doesn't seem to me like anything that has occurred that quite fits that prophecy to me. Nothing that I've heard has ever been an adequate explanation. So they all seem like future tense events to me. And even if the beast is a governance of some type of one world government, that sort of thing seems to be in the future to me. To me, this is my biggest problem with I would say post mill, and I guess you're more flexible with awe mill, but to me it seems like the millennium will come to end with a more satanic kingdom of the Antichrist with a number of things that he must accomplish, and then he will be defeated at the Battle of Armageddon in some way, shape, or form. I think I can remain agnostic as to how exactly, but it certainly seems to suggest that these are future tense things to me.
So you definitely brought up a whole lot of things there. Just in that little bit, there's a whole lot of things. So for one, I think that other people have really made great note in showing and talking about the idea that when you talk about the number, it isn't necessarily meant to be like a very, very specific number in a sense, like, oh, here's the mark of the beast. Yeah, because we also have the seal of the Lamb. All of the believers are sealed to the Lamb, the mark of the Lamb. There weren't tattoos of the Lamb going around during the times of John.
Yes.
And so I think that one, we should be looking at those very metaphorically, and that like, yeah, who are you marked by now? Christ or Satan? And that's the first thing. Now, I do think that there is a potential for a future manifestation of these things in more particular specific ways. But I think you very much have to ask yourself, like, okay, cool. So in what way was this applicable to John's audience? Like, in what way was there a mark of the beast to John's audience? Because we don't see tattoos.
Yeah, but there doesn't have to be to John's audience. Don't you think that some of the things that John is talking about could be future tense related since they're prophetic? Completely future tense related.
Could be. This doesn't, to me, seem to be a one of them nearly as strongly. I mean, I think that some of it was future tense related to some degree, but I think it was also meant for their more immediate, like very near future. This is what's going to happen, and these are the other issues that we see. So, well, and that gets into a couple other things concerning, like, okay, is it referring to 70 AD or is it referring to Dionysian or Diocletian? Oh man. Can't believe I forgot his name.
I think it's Diocletian. That sounds right. I don't know.
Yeah, Diocletian. So I think you can have some of those things, but again, like you contrast it to the mark of Christ. It's like, oh, the mark of the beast and the mark of Christ. Those are the two major things to contrast with. So do you think that there will be future tattoos for all believers in the future? And if you don't think that's the case, then why do you think that only the mark of the beast will be literal? So that's to me one of the challenges there. But
It could be
uh,
completely literal to me personally. I think that certain details about it, such as, I mean, you get into the number, the 666, which seems to correspond, or 616, seems to correspond to something. It
mhm.
could correspond to Nero. It could be both. I think it could be both something that did happen to the believers in that age and is going to happen at the end of our age. But it's specifically talking about so many of the analogies that are used there, such as having the mark on the back of your hand or on your head, is directly related to, is it the what's the thing that the Jews keep on their doorposts called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, well, you're not
It's
talking about the blood. You're talking about something else.
no, on the doorpost from Deuteronomy 6:5, Deuteronomy 6:4. Anyways, that's
Don't know
it's
off the top of my
the
head.
they keep the law. You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Hear, O Israel, the Lord
Mm.
our God is one. Deuteronomy 6:4 and
The
6:5.
Shema.
Yes, the Shema. That's what I'm looking for. They keep it on their doorpost or on their and write it on their forehead and hands. It's using the same imagery as that quotation, and it's saying you'll have to usurp the that being to do this to receive this mark in those specific locations in order to buy and sell. If it didn't say in order to buy and sell, then we could say this is some metaphorical idea, but I don't see a whole lot of other ways to interpret that. If you'd like to open me up to some, I'm open minded, but the
Yeah. So
specific use case of that seems really specific.
so what I would say is that those who do not have his authority, like are not under his authority, either for because head would be authority and hands would be work, right? So the idea of like, yeah, what you do and who you're under. So to me or whatever, it wouldn't have to be literal in that sense, because as long as you're under the beast's authority, which wouldn't necessarily have to be as physical, I think could be a possible interpretation. Now, this is one of those parts where I feel like it'll be much more obvious and apparent when things occur.
Yeah, I think
So
so too.
that's the part where it's like, you know, it could be. I just don't. I'm not sure how definitive we could be. So
Would
like,
you, Adam, be hesitant if somebody said to you, we now have a near field communication, a nanochip, and you have to get it injected into your hand and you can use it to pay for things? Would you be hesitant?
maybe. But here's the thing: is that to me it seems so apparent that this is the future coming.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So and so like the idea of like talking about like, oh, nanochips in your hand is not even far fetched anymore,
Exactly.
right? But certainly there was no idea of this in John's day, right?
Yeah, so but that's why when he maybe sees a mark, but that could be Jesus referring to something in the future. Just like to me, it's almost the same as the idea of the star wormwood falling from heaven. Could be the idea of a comet or an asteroid, which is something that John may not have any immediate context of him, but that's what it looked like to him, was a star falling from heaven.
Now let's go into a little bit of conspiracy land for half a second,
Please.
because I have one or two ideas that I'm tempted to think will be a reality or
Hmm.
how things will go, but I'm not really going to stand on them too strong.
Yeah.
Here's one. I'm very tempted to think that the world will come to a one world language first.
Mm.
And one of the reasons for thinking this actually is kind of the chiastic idea of going from Babel, right? One world language, Babel, introduction, then going back down to one language. And this idea actually really came up to me because of the movie Fahrenheit 451.
Hmm.
I think that's right. And
Yep.
one of the things that happens in that movie is the government, the world conspiring government, their goal is eliminating language. They're like, oh, what are we down to now? Oh, we're down to 66. There's only 66 languages in the world. And their goal is to bring everything down to one language. And then
Hmm.
they're just deciding what word are we going to eliminate now so that people no
Hmm.
longer have. And the idea is that when everyone speaks one language, they're easier to control and manipulate.
Yes.
And so I think that there's a very real possibility that the world would go to that. And some people have thought like, oh, that's kind of absurd or crazy. Well, today, because of modern technology as well, with the advent of AI, you really could have universal translators.
Oh,
If you had a
absolutely.
bot that could do all of these things, and you could, yeah, just have a chip in your ear, your head, whatever, and you could speak Swahili and I could speak English, and it would just translate the words back and forth.
Absolutely.
You could have a one world language in short order.
Hmm.
So I think that that is one of the things that does make it interesting, and the possibility of a one world government ever more a closer reality.
I agree. I support those conspiracy theories. So I don't think we need to be completely unabashed about going into conspiracy territory um, necessarily. So I mean, even what I'm saying about this seeming literal to me, this mark of the beast and all this stuff seem literal to me in Revelation, I would maintain that I'm open to the possibility that there's another interpretation. It just certainly reads that way to me. And I don't necessarily think it's harmful if we're on the watch for something that might kind of fit into these prophetic ideas. Because I think that goes back to kind of what I said about, prophecy being just enough information so that you can know it when you see it. I think that's important. I think it's important that we're at least, you know, what does Jesus say about the end times? Be diligent and stay ready. So, because no man knows the day or the hour, and you want to be careful. You want to be observant and prepared. And I think that that's definitely part of the idea.